Thank you, Madam Secretary and Generals, for being here. General Goldfein, I want to thank you for your service. Had the privilege of receiving testimony from you in this hearing, being in the presence of your presence at a variety of forums, and you're not only a fantastic leader, but a real thought leader. And I hope that as you take off your uniform, you don't venture too far from the national security conversation that's happening in this country. I'm also very excited that your successor, who's been nominated by the president, I'm confident will be confirmed by the Senate, General Charles Brown, the first African-American chief of staff, not only for the Air Force, but of any service component. So I'm looking forward to working with him as we ensure that the United States has the air power necessary to counter our adversaries. I wanted to talk about the shortfall in the number of pilots that impacts readiness, but take a more narrow approach. In your joint statement, you say that diverse, resilient, and ready airmen and space professionals are the bedrock of the department's readiness and lethality. You've got a pilot shortfall, and you've got a problem. You're lacking diversity and inclusion among your aviators. In April 3rd of 1939, this Congress created and funded the program that today we know as the Tuskegee Airmen. There were 1,000 pilots in that program. Granted, the core of pilots was much larger as we were gearing up for World War II, but it represented 0.5%, small percentage of the pilots. Today, there are only 47 African Americans who fly fixed wing in the Air Force. That's 1.5%. And I don't have the numbers for women, but it's as disturbingly low. I know that you're doing a number of things to address that. But the question is, what can we do 81 years later as a Congress to enable you to achieve the diversity, not just for the sake of the diversity, but to enable you and our nation to meet the readiness needs and the challenges that are faced by a shortfall in the pilots that we have in uniform? Can you please address that for me?
Well, as a pilot and someone who worked ardently to get the 1948 law that prohibited women from flying fighters, to get that law changed in 1992 and the policies changed in 1993, it is a topic that matters a great deal to me. And as the secretary who recommended C.Q. Brown's appointment, I feel strongly that we need to occupy the talent in whatever package that talent is presented. I've been a friend of a number of Tuskegee Airmen over the decades and decades, and was there when the president pinned on the general star on now General McGee, a Tuskegee Airman who celebrated his 100th birthday not so long ago. The first thing we have to do is recognize there's a problem, and the quantification of that problem is what the RAND report recently identified for us. And then I think one of the things that will help us is the recent attention brought to military service of when the Space Force was stood up. There's a new excitement about being a part of the military service. People want to be a part of the Air Force and Space Force as a result of that. I would invite my colleagues both to speak to it as well, or I welcome meeting with you further.
I'll take that for the record, because let me just point out that this is what the report found, and we cannot be afraid of this. We have to take it head on. It says that minorities and women, the report found that barriers to minorities and women included racist and sexist comments from simulation instructors, race and gender stereotyping, and a contending with the prevailing culture. This was based on focus groups from not only students, but instructors and leaders. We've got a culture problem in the Air Force, and I expressed this last week in the Navy. So I just implore you to take this on and ask Congress for your help. And in the last 20 seconds I have, let me make a pitch for this. I visited Dover Air Force Base. They're right next door to Delaware State University, an historically black college and university. They have an aviation program there. Their ROTC affiliation, unfortunately, is an hour drive away from Delaware State. let's find flexibility to establish an ROTC unit right there at Delaware State University so they can team up with Dover and help address this need. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.